So, a movie review for you. This is the 1962 movie, A Kind of Loving. Remarkable movie. It only cost £165,000, I noted from Wikipedia, and almost trebled that at the box office. It was directed by John Schlesinger. In fact, it was his debut as a director, significant as he went on to have a great career in cinema. Produced by Joseph Janney, from a script written by Keith Waterhouse and Willis Hall, but that's the screenplay, based on a novel by Stan Barstow, and this movie did win the Golden Bear. The cast: Alan Bates in the lead role as Vic Brown. Thora Hare plays Mrs. Rothwell. She's the mother of Ingrid Rothwell, who's played by June Ritchie. Burt Palmer plays Vic's father, Jeff Brown, and Pat Keane plays Christine Harris, Vic's sister. James Boland is Jeff, Vic's friend. Jack Smethurst plays Conray, another friend, and Gwen Nelson plays Vic's mother. And John Renane is a draftsman where Vic works, and also I noted Leonard Rossiter as another draftsman. His character name's Whymper, and there are a few other friends of Ingrid's, and that covers the cast. So this is another early 60s movie encapsulating life in working class communities in the north of England, this time in a grim industrial town in Lancashire. And director Schlesinger, as I said, it's his debut release, and he focuses on a story really about romance, its trials and tribulations. We get to look at the moral dilemmas of an unplanned pregnancy, and how the couple tackle this crisis in their relationship, how their families react, and how it impacts on the couple. Draftsman Vic Brown starts dating Ingrid Rothwell, and you might remember June Ritchie if you've seen Live Now, Pay Later. But she works here in the factory typist pool. Ingrid invites the easygoing, following the early stages of dating, Ingrid invites the easygoing Vic to stay overnight when her mother, her widowed mother, is away, and it results in her unexpected pregnancy. Vic reacts like many did and agrees to marry her. The couple start married life, living with Ingrid's narrow-minded, domineering mum, and their marriage starts to crumble as Vic struggles to cope with being bossed about by his newly acquired mother-in-law. The strong physical attraction that was around at the beginning of their relationship falters as Ingrid becomes affected by her mother's presence in the next door bedroom, and then she has a fall that leads to a miscarriage. Vic predictably leaves shortly after, but when seeking support from his family, sister, mother and father, they're all of the opinion, to a greater or lesser extent, that he should make his own bed and lie in it. That little phrase is quite familiar to Brits about decision making. This leads to a sort of reconciliation with Ingrid and a fresh start in their own place, with a glimmer of hope that the marriage might work out in, as we say, a kind of loving manner. So tells the title. Now I'm going to go through the movie, talk about scenes that caught my eye. This may be construed as a plot stealer, but a plot spoiler rather, but I think it's quite important so that one gets a rounded picture of what one's likely to see. It would start off at a wedding, and there's a photo shoot and a frenzy of all the people involved in the movie are there, and Of course, we might recall wedding photos. We always want ourselves to be in the picture, and that's what Schlesinger, I think, is trying to convey here. And then he moves on to capturing working life in a draftsman office on a Monday morning. I can recall in the 60s and early 70s, apprenticeships were really so vital for young people who were seeking out work, particularly men. And one of the apprenticeships on offer was to become a draftsman. And so here we capture it. Young men on a Monday morning, of course, tend to be chatting about real and imaginary conquests over the weekend. I like that touch. Then we move to a shared bus ride between Vic and Ingrid, and eventually a date is arranged. But again, we get a snippet of the struggle to make small talk between young man and young woman, which I did enjoy. It rang so many bells with myself. They are sort of pretty naive in terms of that. But Bates' excitement after acquiring the date is seen clearly as he skips back to his house. And then moving on, a second date, a date is arranged, and we get a scenario where Ingrid brings her friend along, which really crushes Vic's enthusiasm, and eventually storms off, and it appears the romance is off. But a note from Ingrid at work reinvigorates the juices. The movie is very reflective of the morality around at that time. Sex outside marriage was still very much the exception and frowned upon by the older generation. Be careful was the standard advice for young girls who were going out on dates. And in Lancashire, they added the little word lass to that, to reflect the fact that they were very young and vulnerable. And we then went on to, we gained this idea that sex, if you had sex, particularly if you were a woman, you were labelled as being common or slut-like. And this was a very strong message that put off many women. And frustrated lots of men, of course. This strict post-war moral tone was pre-permissive society, which resulted following the discovery of the contraceptive pill. Schlesinger gives us a pen picture of Vic's parents. His dad is somewhat more open to Vic's thoughts, especially when he suggests he might want to travel a bit before settling down. His mother, however, is very prone to snuff things out, and basically is into the notion you get a steady job, then get married, and then have a family. And so she's very much against this and has a very fixed, rigid view of how life should unfold. Conversations between Ingrid and Vic also show a huge gulf. One scene where Vic starts to talk about the idea of donating blood, and Ingrid is more interested in discussing the latest episode in a TV soap opera. And this is clearly captured when Vic's eyes tell it all about how he views Ingrid's response and interest. Another scene in a cafe, we note Vic looking round at all the couples, young couples there, and there's a lack of sort of conversation, a lack of intimacy. They all seem to be just going through the motions, and it really brings sort of concerns to him. Back to the subject of sex, there's a conversation between the two about this, and it's also cumbersome, to say the least. There's a reticence on the part of both of them. Also, we touch on male peers and how they exaggerate, or were prone to exaggerate, to impress their friends with regard to this topic. And then we fleetingly get a scene where Vic decides that he needs to buy some condoms in a chemist, and he's reticent about this, and I can certainly adhere to that. And when he goes in, he's hopeful that a male will come to serve him, and when a female does, he ends up buying something that he didn't want and doesn't get the condoms. And this, of course, has great ramifications a little later after the unprotected sex. And so it's I enjoy sort of seeing how this script evolved. We capture a night at a social club. It's non-alcoholic, it might be added, and Vic's with his set of friends, and Ingrid is at hers, and he shares with his mates that some days he really wants her. It's his sort of lust that wants her, and other days he really can't stand the sight of her yapping on, which seems to encapsulate everything. Then the boys decide they've had enough of the rather timid social that's taking on, so they head off to the pub, and Ingrid catches Vic and then announces to him that she's pregnant. He later caves into the social pressure to marry, and we get a hastily arranged registry office, and then a short honeymoon at Lytham St Anne's on a seaside resort not too far away from in Lancashire. What happens there following, he ends up living with Ingrid at her mother's, and we get the classic mother-in-law syndrome. The marriage hasn't had any chance of working really, and Vic's stress levels build up to breaking point, leading to a heavy night on the booze, and comes home in the early part of the morning, and he finds out that Ingrid is in hospital and that she's had a fall, and no one's told him, and she loses the baby. You would think after that things might relax. No such way. There's a sex ban by Ingrid, and this adds to Vic's frustration, and he turns to more booze. And one night out with a friend, he goes on a huge pub crawl, and he comes back to the house absolutely plastered, and there's a huge argument with the mother-in-law and Ingrid supporting her mother, and Vic then basically picks up his bag and leaves, and it looks certain that the marriage is heading for the rocks. He ends up sleeping rough on a railway station seat, and it's pretty chilly, but I love the cinematography there. We catch Vic looking up the platform as the train moves through the station with the steam-filled night in evidence, and we catch a glimpse of Vic's face as if to say, what's gone wrong? He seeks solace from his family, but however there isn't a lot of sympathy, as most of it is with the young girl who's lost the child. And although his father is a little bit more sympathetic, he does give Vic the advice that he needs to get him and her out of the mother-in-law's house. So we're then left with a potential reconciliation and a ray of hope as the couple begin living together in their very small rented flat. So in conclusion, I think Bates gives an outstanding performance as a cheeky but confused young adult. Palmer and Nelson as his working class family, its working class parents, I think are terrific, and they are almost, you can almost imagine them being real parents, very down to earth. The tense class conscious kitchen sink drama draws out a bittersweet story really of working class types caught between striving to conform and yearning to escape their fate by spreading their wings. Schlesinger never patronises the struggling couple, however, and views their plight in a very sympathetic way, and also a mention for Thora Her, who's absolutely terrific as the mother-in-law. So I suggest you get to view this, another of those kitchen sink dramas. They're, as far as I'm concerned, are 5-star pieces of work. So that's my review on A Kind of Loving, released in 1962.